My perspective on healthcare and the IT is perhaps the opposite to what you're used to, which is the end user. I've been an end user of all kinds of IT applications probably for the last 15 years. And I've used what Francis had mentioned, IHIS systems. I've used standalone systems, and now I'm in private practice and I use my own system. So perhaps that's the background in which I come from. Very opposite to what you see from a data farm, from data being accessed, but from a very personal point of view. So this is what I learned for clinical work. Clearly, the first thing I learned in the third year medical school, which is when we first see patients. Professors who are now dead or alive have taught me 19 years ago when I graduated very clearly, 90% of the problem is when the patient tells you. If you listen to your patients, you do no work. And it's something which I still remember to this day. That's why I put it as a second slide. And why medical records coming from there off make your life easy. Okay, I quantify that statement because I'm a surgeon. Surgeons are very focused. I don't like to hear any other things except what I need to do. And if I can clear it and solve the problem, I go home and sleep, because surgeons never seem to sleep enough. Okay, so that's something that you keep in your mind when I give the rest of my presentation. We have lousy memories. We need to write down, and an example of what I face all the time is that sometimes I can't really remember which wrist I was talking about in the patient that just left my room. So I have to imagine how the patient was sitting in front of me, whether it was right or left. So if I could write it down quickly on something, which is when I first started 19 years ago, which is a piece of paper, right hand, right leg, because I did orthopedics before, at least I solved the most fundamental part of the information, which is to get the correct problem recorded down. So medical records are not a new thing. It hasn't come because the IT system has been around. It's been around for a long time. You can find this in the British Museum if you ever go there. All right. I don't know what Edwin Smith got it, but I think he happened to pick it up somewhere in Egypt. But it's written by some poor guy who was a doctor in Egypt. Okay. I'm a hand surgeon. If you don't know what a hand surgeon does, it's an amalgam between an orthopedic surgeon and a plastic surgeon. So I'm not an aesthetic surgeon, I'm a plastic reconstructive surgeon. But I treat this unique condition, which is paralysis. And this is someone's record of a guy breaking his neck. And he wrote it down in the same script that I write nowadays, which is unintelligible. All right? So he follows very clear guidelines, which is an examination, a diagnosis, and this guy added more to it by giving you a glossary. So essentially, what has happened in 2000 BC is still the same. If you break your neck, you're in trouble. Okay, so this is just an example of a medical record that doctors have been doing for the last 3,000 years. Okay, so when we take a record from someone, it's based on trust, because you can tell him something very personal, very unique, and it has to be recorded accurately and stored. Okay? Confidentiality is an issue. That's why we talk about security. Security being part of confidentiality. All right? Without records, no treatment can be instituted. So beware the doctor who doesn't speak to you or listen to you and starts treatment straight away. Okay, so what's the stereotype? The stereotype is a doctor that doesn't write with terrible, poor handwriting that he can't even read himself, which has happened to me and many of my colleagues. And that cartoon just magnifies the problem. Okay, so what's expected when you take a medical record? And you see the next slide, which is the one that's interesting. We need eye contact. So I'm speaking to you right now. I'm giving you eye contact. I'm trying to see if people are listening to me and vice versa. Nothing's worse in any culture that if I face the back of my head towards you, and in this case, I'm speaking before I listen, which is a cardinal rule I've broken. And this last one, if the patient can share with you exactly where you have drawn the problem, you have solved the problem. The patient points, the patient will gesticulate, and if you have a piece of paper and you wrote something down, the patient says, no, 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 it's the right side. You've got the right medical record. So that's it. There's this untold and intangible relationship between the patient and the doctor over a table, much like you would describe something which is dear to your heart, to your friend, and you draw it on a napkin. This is the norm now. This is what an end user is doing, and if you have not been sick, maybe try to be sick, and you realize that the doctors do not look at you anymore. The poor lady is sitting there. It's actually a montage of 2 pictures I found on the net, but it does explain the problem. The poor lady is sitting there wondering what to do with the hand clasped, and the doctor's looking at the screen, looking very perplexed. How do I navigate through the multitude of options and file and God knows what other things that are available in the systems that I use? I'm still a visiting consultant in Tan Tock Seng and NUH, so I see both the systems right now. That's missing. That is the key that is missing. You can have the best servers that give me the best possible network. The end user will not bite. Okay, most of us won't bite. If you spend your life doing medicine, staring at the computer, somehow it wouldn't bite. I can speak for maybe 90% of my colleagues. So, what's a good EMR? I mean, this is a global statement, but there's a lot more to flesh out. It must mimic a paper record to a degree. It has to move. The patients have a folder, and if you look at American sitcoms, you have this little slot at the back of the gurney, and the paper goes along with the patient. And that's how medicine is practiced in acute circumstances. I'm not talking about general practitioners, in hospital-based systems. It must grow with the patient because you do get older and you get more problems. And if it's limited to a hospital that you happen to be not in when you are sick, you're in trouble. You're as good as nothing. Go back to Mark 1, which is taking a good history. If you are out comatose, good luck to you. Okay? So you treat you like an animal. The vets don't communicate with animals. They just examine most of the time. Okay? And it must be accessible. So this is the traditional model. I think most of you are aware, because I think there's no one in this room that hasn't been sick. And if I brought a piece of papyrus in today to a general practice and I started writing with a quill pen, most of you would be wondering why I write on the papyrus, but you'd be able to recognize the fact that I'm still writing what you are telling me. So we haven't changed in 3,000 to 4,000 years. Okay? What we need nowadays, with all the technology that's flowing around us, I mean, I have 2 smartphones. They're much smarter than me. Why aren't we using it to what is meant to be, which is portable and can change? What's missing in it? If you're not aware, hospitals-based doctors have many facets. So there's a question that always baffles me when administrators ask me when I was in 15 years in the government service, 19, sorry, is what's your phone number? And they didn't mean your mobile number, they meant your office number. So I tell them, I'm never sitting at one spot. I move. My patients are everywhere. All right? There's the ward, there's homes. If you do home visits, if you're a visiting doctor that has no office, you got to see them in theatre, you got to see them in emergency. The concept of a doctor sitting on a nice chair in a room only extends to the general practitioner. And even then, the doctor moves. All right? So mobility is key. Just an example, illustration of how you happen to you. So you have clinic A, you're home, you get sick, you go see your doctor. The doctor says, oh man, you're bad. Emergency A, you go. You get admitted to the ward. You get operated upon, people like me, with a sharp knife legally. And then you get better, then you end up with a step-down facility. So that alone, you've moved just about everywhere. Okay, this is the real life scenario. Your husband doesn't want you back, or your wife doesn't want you back. So you stay in your relative's home. Alright? Then the relative says, no, that clinic in west of Singapore is too far, I'm going to bring you to the one in the east. Dad says, I'm sick of you. You throw up every morning, I'm sending you home. So the wife takes you back. The wife got fed up, sent you back to the relative home again because she's going on a business trip. And you're hobbling around, right, on your crutches. After that, nobody can stand you, you're back in the step home. That is the scenario that the medical record has to follow and follow you through to the end. So how do you get it to follow? I mean, we've thought about it for 15 years. How do you do it? 15 years ago, they said you carry a thumb drive around. And there was a company that tried to sell that concept to all of us. The thumb drive then was 64 megabyte. It cost about $150. Nobody bid. Okay? So it all went down to how mobile that piece of information is. So right now, and most of us are aware, the ministry here is also supporting us. We are literally land-based. We are wired, living in a wireless world. Okay? If you go to hospitals now, there are cows in wards. And I don't mean the bovine grass-eating variety. They're called computer on wheels. The house officer's job is to push the cow around. Okay? And half the time, the battery runs out. So they put another battery at home. It's heavy. If it tips on you, you're going to be a patient. All right? The legacy system is essentially a nodal system. If it fails anywhere along, we're back to that diagram again. It is not peculiar to the health giver. It's given and shared by everybody. So thereby the issue of confidentiality and security. And anytime one of the nodes break down, you're back to Mark 1 again. Okay? So and medical records should be and would be mimicking paper. So when I saw the first iPad about 4 years ago, I was all excited. But Steve Jobs was more interested in selling it and for you to play games. At the time, I think Angry Birds. But that's the way to go because it is, after all, mimicking the paper and slate. This is the modern papyrus, if you can call it that way. Okay? These are the ones that are counter to where we are going. We should go in that direction because patients automatically relate to you taking a piece of information down. It's expected that the doctor listens and writes something. It is culturally acceptable. Okay? That reminds me of the song of Fleetwood Mac, which is I Want to Be With You All the Time, which is one of the songs I hear when I went to medical school. That one, everybody knows about it. But it takes a furniture company to tell us that that's what people are interested in. However, it's limited. It's 256 pages, much less than whatever storage we were using. So this is how I take notes, Mark 1. It's a folder. I draw on it. I scribble on it. Thankfully, you can't read it because it's confidential. All right? But it's limited. It's limited to what I can squeeze and write in on a piece of paper and how big the folder is. Right now, I'm using this, which is a LAN one, which is no different from the hospitals. Many records, so it kind of solved my storage issues with the LAN costs in Singapore now. But if you actually combine the two, and you get all of that together via the cloud, okay, then you are actually breaking the traditional rules that Francis was talking about. How do we see a patient now? For example, anyone here wants to see me for some other reason. I call down an area, I dig you up, I log you in, you log in, because you have to allow me to see you, right? And if it's available, I bill you through the insurance, and there you are. That's a consultation. Why do we have to see doctors in fixed areas? That's one option for they're relatively healthy. If you're sick, please go to the A&E, because that's what it is for. The other thing is Dropbox, WhatsApp. All my friends are using it. We're having chats. My patients contact me and says, can you put your My X-ray that you have, which I misplaced because the CD is gone, I lost it. Could you give me a copy of the X-ray? Because I like a bit of a memento. So I check that it is who he is, and I give it to him, minus my name and the patient's name. So the patient just looking at the plain X-ray. I overcome the issue of confidentiality. He gets what he wants. So what if you combine that too, which is the purpose of this meeting here? How can you give the doctor the freedom that he's been waiting for in the last 3,000 years. Okay? Always issues about confidentiality, security, but I'm not the expert. I mean, we can talk about it and we can work it out. We can work it out so much. I mean, you can one-time password, you can have 2 or 3 people signing in, whatever it means to take it, to make the government happy, and reliability. Okay? So that's the holy grail, frankly. If you gave somebody in the final year of medical school today an iPad, he'd be happy, or whatever, Android-based, doesn't really matter how you do it. If he can then carry that and the software and move with every model thereafter for the next of his 30, 40 years of practice, that's how he should do it. It is the medical record that the doctor carries for the patient when the patient sees the doctor. Okay? You can still use it within a fixed facility if you so practice like that. You can use it within the community. You can use it within other hospitals. What you put into the medical record, which is dependent on us, is what you get out of it. Right now, with the amount of information we have that actually floods our brains, sometimes I see my house officers, they just cut and paste everything. 15 years ago, I had 1 page to fill the summary of the patient, which means I had to sit there for 15 minutes, think about it, write the relevant pieces of information. Because at the end of the day, no one's going to read every single blood test that has been poked through your veins for the last month. They just want to see the trend, and they want to see the last blood result, because that is the one that matters. So, for my side of it, when I was a residency director for teaching in university, that's what we taught our students. Too much information. We are just drowning ourselves, because it's easy to cut and paste. That's what we had for a long period of time, but we're solving that problem. So a central position is good. You can have x-rays, you can have lab results, you can have legacy stuff, you can have therapists contributing. But without a proper medical record, none of these things will gel. The pivot on which how you do it is to provide the doctor, the healthcare giver, the nurse, an easy, a flexible, and a portable way of recording accurate data. As you read in the second slide that I showed today, 90% of it comes from the history. As an orthopedic-based and hand surgeon, I look at x-rays every day. The x-ray is an adjunct to the treatment and management. The x-ray is not the reason why you came to see me for. Okay? So the challenge is, the first one, we have to keep good results. It is truly a rubbish in, rubbish out situation. We need to update it effectively, easily. If I have to update a patient's records and it takes me 20 minutes and I take 10 minutes to do the surgery, I would safely say, as a medical professional, for at least 90% of my colleagues, we will walk out and go back to the pen and paper. All right? This is what I've done in private practice because they gave me a raw system and all of us gave up because they can't force us to do it. So doctors are a little bit also uncontrollable, like cats. You cannot hurt cats. So this is the issue. Keep it simple. Because we can do it in the handwritten form, we maintain the very tradition of medicine, which is bedside manners and communication. And that includes listening without being unobtrusive, typing on the computer, looking away from the patient. All right? So this is, in essence, how we look at cloud, how we think cloud can help return us back to the original basis of where we practice medicine, how we can truly use it and not be frightened of. Because a lot of my colleagues, when they hear of computer systems, especially the older ones, I have a colleague which is 75 years old. He has to employ and get a house officer to sit next to him when he sees the patient. Okay, there's this phobia of using a keyboard and not facing the patient. But I think the generation that follows, which includes myself and then the ones after that, will appreciate that if it's as traditional as possible, the way that we were taught, perhaps that's the way that we should be going. And I think cloud promises us something which is probably is to come. And I think the next generation will take it for granted that we had this discussion in the first place.